Hello, hello. Welcome back to Old Path, New Walk. As I said in the last video, we have been resurrected from not the dead, but pretty close, to a bunch of illness. We have been swamped with illness and just trying to keep up with these cute kids of ours and house projects because, we're never short of those. And we just got baby chicks because, we needed one more thing to do with our precious time. Today I wanted to give some tips on how to not buy 10 different sippy cups for your baby. The more kids that we have in our family, the more simplified things become for our sake and for our kids' sake. When we had our first child, we were inundated with all the information and these gadgets that you should have and the things that you shouldn't have. You should do this, you shouldn't do that. And it was just very overwhelming. And we were trying to figure out the right things to do for our kid when really we just needed to use our instincts. One of the ways that we simplified things for our family when we have babies in the house is feeding and drinking, and more specifically, letting our kids drink from open face cups when they're babies and not fooling with sippy cups and other gadgets. When our first and second kids were 8 months old, they were proficiently using open face cups. Now, part of that is because mom's an OT, and first and second kid, you have time to devote towards developing your kids in certain ways. But with our third kid, we got real lazy. Maybe not lazy, more relaxed. We didn't start working with her until she was about 10 months old, drinking from an open face cup. And it really only took a couple weeks. When she was 11 months old, she was drinking proficiently from an open face cup. Now, this is not to, we are doing it right and we're great and look at us. That's not it at all. This is, we thought that it was unrealistic and virtually impossible to teach our kid this skill at a young age until we tried it. And then we realized how simple it actually was to teach this skill. And we felt like a lot of pressure lifted off, that we didn't have to have a specific gadget that was going to be the right fit for this child to teach them a skill. It was, hey, we spent a couple weeks practicing this skill at a meal time. There was no time devoted outside of that. It was just during meal times and when we had the capacity to hand this child a cup and let her practice with it. That's all just encouragement. Like, yeah, it might seem unrealistic to do this, but for us, we felt like it really simplified meal times and a lot of things for us. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this, much with anything in life. There are children all over the world who developmentally could not reach this skill at this age level. And I get it. I've worked with these kids. So whatever tools and resources work for your family at whatever age, do that. Like, this isn't pressure to, oh, you should do this thing. This is just encouragement like, hey, if this is a stress point for you where you're trying to find a certain sippy cup or a certain gadget for drinking system, then maybe just simplify it and just give it a try. So, some pros to teaching your kid how to drink from an open faced cup in their first year. No unnecessary gadgets or sippy cups that you have to keep track of, washing and making sure that they're ready for mealtime. Less unnecessary spending on different drinking systems that may or may not work for your kid. And you're not spending a ton of money using different gadgets that companies want to sell you that, oh, this is what you need. There are fewer learning steps for the baby going from breastfeeding or bottle feeding to a sippy cup and then to a straw and then to an open face cup. You're just going straight from you're drinking milk and now it's time to drink water and you're drinking out of an open face cup. In my experience as an OT, I feel like it's harder for a child to learn all these intermittent skills. And then by the time they're 2 and 3 years old, they're really struggling to drink from an open face cup because one, their attention span is a lot less. they're a lot more mobile. So they are making more messes and spills. And they've had to learn a few different skills before that, you know, they're not really building off of the skill of drinking from a sippy cup to drinking from an open face cup. They've kind of had this false sense of security when drinking from a sippy cup. And then when they go to drink from an open face cup, it spills all over them. And finally, the child can adapt more easily across environments. So you're not searching for this specific drinking system that you need when you're going to a friend's house or going to a restaurant, or you're traveling for the weekend and you need to make sure to pack X, Y, and Z for their drinking. They just use any kind of open face cup that's available across these environments, and it's a lot easier. Some cons behind teaching your baby how to drink from an open face cup. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit more of a mess to start with, and that's okay. It's the learning of being okay with some spills during mealtime. Another con is they could maybe break a breakable cup. And so it just depends on what kind of cup you're offering them. In our house, we use mason jars a lot of time. Mason jars are kind of disposable in our house. I am not tied to a mason jar. So you might be thinking, okay, this is a really cute idea, Caitlin, but actually, how do I teach my baby how to drink from an open faced cup? Pretty simple. Grade the task. I say this a ton when teaching kids and parents different skills. You want to break this down into the smallest component possible. So, a starting point that we do in our house is we just give the baby the cup. The cup has nothing in it. They can just hold it and fling it around and drop it on the floor, and maybe they bring it to their mouth. Great. But they're just exploring the cup itself. They're getting an idea how big the cup is, how tall the cup is, how heavy the cup is, if some of them have a handle, or if some of them don't have a handle. Their body is becoming aware of how this cup moves in their space and how they can physically manipulate the cup. Then what we do is I will physically do hand over hand with the baby and have her hold the cup, and I will have my hand over her hands and then help her bring the cup to her mouth so that she can start developing that motor pattern of I'm grasping the cup with both hands and then using those skills to bring it to her mouth successfully. This is also without water. You're just helping them figure out how to do that motor planning. And then you move on to just adding the tiniest amount of water to the cup. This could be a couple drops. You could just fill the bottom of the cup with barely enough water. You want them to have enough in there that they're going to get that tactile feedback of when they bring it to their mouth, water's going to come out, and it's either going to go in their mouth or it's going to go all over them. And that's okay. But you want them to have that feedback from the water. And then you're still doing that hand over hand. You're helping bring it to their mouth, and you're helping moderate how much of a flow you're letting come out of the cup. And then finally, you're kind of taking a hands off approach. So you're letting the child grab the cup themselves, and then they're bringing it to their mouth. And hopefully, they're aiming for their mouth. Maybe they're aiming for their eyeballs or their nose or their chest, but they're aiming for something. And eventually, the more exposure they have to doing this, the more fluid this is going to become for them. It's going to be smoother motor patterns that are developing, and they're going to become much more proficient at actually getting the water in their mouth and not on their cute little outfits. One more thing I want to note is I intentionally don't use bibs for our kids because I want them to get that tactile feedback of, hey, water just spilled on me because I didn't aim it to my mouth, I aimed it to my eyeballs. You know, you want them to get a little bit wet so that they're understanding the cause and effect relationship of drinking out of this cute little cup. And then you just get to watch your sweet little baby do this really cute skill. And you get to be like, wow, you really could do that. I didn't realize that that was even possible. And these are just some examples of cups that we have used for our kids. This is a cute little stainless steel cup with a handle. This is a cute little, I think this is made of bamboo cup. It's more of a children's cup, but our baby does use this. And then the good old mason jar. We love these things, and the baby actually really manages this very well. So hopefully this is encouragement for you. You can teach your baby this skill that seems unrealistic and not practical for their age, but you really can do it, and you can be impressed by your baby and yourself for teaching them that. And hopefully this is just one thing that you can take the stress off of your family and just simplify in your life. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please hit the like button and even hit subscribe so that you can be notified whenever I put out new content. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful spring day. I'll see you next time.